We recently had an exclusive interview here on Wish TV with Jamie Dimon, the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Chase. He had very interesting comments about education, and I want to play those for you right now. Look.
Too much focus in education has been on, graduating college or graduating this, but it should be on jobs. I think schools should be measuring, did the kids get out and get a good job? So you could be a teller and make $40,000 a year as a 17-year-old. And if you happen to have a family at 18 or whatever, you get $20,000 in medical benefits for your family. And so you could be a welder, you could be a coder, you could be cyber, you could be automotive, you could be all those jobs are $40,000 to $60,000, $70,000 a year. So jobs, education. I know there are a lot of efforts taking place in Indianapolis and around the country, but I think we've fallen behind as a nation.
And we covered similar comments just last year from Lilly CEO David Ricks, who said education attainment in Indiana is not good. So we'll go to this next question. We'll start with you, Mr. Hill. Is Indiana doing enough to prepare high school students for jobs after graduating? 60 seconds to you, sir.
The short answer is no, and we need to do more. There are so many opportunities, as the speaker said, there are so many opportunities out there for kids, for youngsters to grow into vocations, and we need to train them at a better stage. We need to identify their talents at an earlier age and make sure that we direct them into those paths. This idea that everyone goes to college it's really sad, because what happens is we have too many kids going to college, getting a worthless degree, gender studies, coming up with $200,000 in debt, and trying to figure out how they're going to make it on down their future. These kids need to have programs that are lined up for their talents, and I would support vocational programs, also encourage military programs for children.
Okay. Mr. Hill, thank you. Mr. Chambers, 60 seconds. Are we doing enough for high school students?
I would adjust Mr. Dimon's comment to wages. When I was Secretary of Commerce, I laser focused on raising wages in Indiana. Indiana wages are 30% less than U.S. average, and that is unacceptable to me because Indiana is not a below average state. So let's talk about wages. I was thrilled to be able to move that by bringing in high wage jobs in Indiana. We can do it. But trades is important. In our Learn to Earn policy that we put out in January, we have a focus on trades. It doesn't always have to be college. In one of the trades for construction, for electrical, for plumbing, the other trade I like is for a civics trade, for police and firefighters. When I was growing up, we looked up to people in uniforms. Those are good living for people. So a life sciences trade. So correct, let's make sure we're preparing people to earn more, right? It's about wages and jobs. And you can do that starting in 7th grade. One of those trade pathways is college.
Okay. Mr. Chambers, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Crouch, 60 seconds.
Our education system should be preparing our children for the jobs of the future. And those are advanced manufacturing, ag bioscience, cybersecurity, defense, healthcare, orthopedics, and life sciences. And so we need to be preparing children that can enter into those professions. But we also need to be preparing children that can support the infrastructure that has to be in place for these professions. And it's why I want to reform, as governor, our education system and our workforce training system, because we have 5 agencies that deal with workforce training and education. Let's get them down to one, everyone on the same page, everyone on the same software system, preparing our children for the next step in college, the next step upon graduation, whether it's enlistment, employment, enrollment, or apprenticeship.
Ms. Crouch, thank you. Mr. Doden, 60 seconds. Is Indiana doing enough to prepare high school students?
Well, I think this is where some creativity and partnerships have to come in. We actually have an idea that would give seniors more time to do internships and partnerships. We've also been encouraging businesses to go into the high schools and make them aware of some of the creative things they're doing right around them. Sometimes when you ask the high school students if they know what's going on just down the street, they don't even know about the business or the opportunity. And then we have this Jim Kelly School of Business in Fort Wayne that is allowing people to use AI to see if they want to do various things, like, right there they can try to weld, they can try to, do heavy equipment right there in that room, and then see if that's a job that they would like. But I think this is the kind of partnerships that we need. And then we've tried to also get with parents. One time I was in a room with 300 parents, and they all said, hey, we need more kids in the trade. And I asked how many of you have encouraged your kids to go in the trade, and nobody raised their hand. So I think that it's also a partnership with parents, helping them understand all the opportunities as well.
Okay, Mr. Doden, thank you very much. Mr. Brock?
Basically, I said that as an answer of what we needed to do comprehensively to the question before. What Jamie Dimon just said, I've been preaching all along. Only about 1/3 of our jobs out there that we guide through our guidance system and the Department of Education pushes needs a 4-year degree. For any of us that have run businesses, you clearly need better skill sets coming out of high school. You could take engine mechanics, a wood shop, metal shop. We need a civics course. You need to be able to balance your checkbook. We're not doing that. And the reason is higher ed has stigmatized those pathways. Our guidance counselors won't mention them. And until you're ready to shake that up, you can do a lot of talking about it, but you're not going to get anything done. We need the perfect balance. Most of that's going to be in real skills that everyone benefits from, high demand, high wage jobs. Parents need to see that so they know where they're going to spend the money for their kids.
Ms. Braun, thank you. Candidates, thank you very much. April.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs received a great deal of attention after the death of George Floyd in 2020. More recently, the programs have faced growing criticism with major companies pulling back. What should Indiana's role be in DEI programs, and what would you keep the state? Would you keep the state the DEI officer? I'm going to start with you, Mr. Chambers.
As it relates to keeping the DEI office open, I don't believe that's something that should be part of a government entity. So the answer is no. I don't believe that's the case. This is about, in our business, I've been in business 40 years. This is about creating a level playing field for all people to apply, and then hiring the best. We need to drive profitability in our company, and to do that, you need to hire the best. So it's about a level playing field, welcoming all, but hiring the best to drive profit and growth in any organization. I don't believe it belongs in a government entity.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Ms. Crouch.
DEI is divisive, it's exclusionary, and it is absolutely not inclusive. And so the Supreme Court last year said the racial preferences were unconstitutional for university admissions. And so the reasoning would be that DEI is unconstitutional also. No state dollars should be dedicated to this. But if we're really going to talk about diversity, let's talk about how we can hire more individuals with disabilities. In September, as the chair of the Intellectual and Developmental Disability Task Force, I visited companies here in Indiana who had the program to hire those Hoosiers with disabilities because they have a 70% unemployment rate, and we have 100,000 jobs that are unfilled. So let's give opportunities to those Hoosiers who have disabilities. Not only will they fill jobs, but they will lift up the workforce and add meaning to the workplace.
Thank you, Ms. Crouch. Mr. Doden, what should Indiana's role be in DEI programs?
Under my leadership as governor, we will not have the Office of DEI. I do not believe in virtue signaling. I've been taught since I was a kid that those who talk the most often do the least. And so what we're going to do is we're going to build teams and we're going to solve problems. And when you build teams and solve problems, you cannot have groupthink. You have to have people from all different kinds of backgrounds, thought processes, ideas, but you have to have the best people at the table. And we're going to try to build the best team possible with our 30 agency heads. In fact, I'm the only candidate on stage that says every agency head will have to reapply for their job. And then once we begin to solve problems, what you have to do is lead by example, and we're going to lead by example.
Thank you, Mr. Doden. Mr. Braun, you have 60 seconds.
This is a no-brainer. Freedom and opportunity. You do not need anything else that forces outcomes. My freedom and opportunity agenda clearly says how we're going to do that in about 12 different arenas. And if we do that and give a level playing field for everyone, you get rid of that need. That's mostly crafted in the halls of big government and big business. And if you're not an outspoken critic against that, you're going to end up getting policies like that we've even embraced in a place like Indiana. So it begs the question, how did we get there? One of the reasons I think that you got to be more attentive to what goes on in your own state is because that creeps in. If you start listening to only the biggest players, you're going to sometimes do things that are counterproductive. That's how we got there. You're going to have somebody that's willing to turn it around and have a plan that benefits everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Braun. Mr. Hill, what should Indiana's role be in DEI programs?
Well, I'm glad that all my opponents have jumped on the bandwagon, because months ago I came out with a proposal that on my first day in office we would eliminate the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, and we maintain that. It's interesting to me that the Lieutenant Governor is suggesting that DEI is divisive, but it's her administration that has put this position in place. Mr. Chambers also is critical of DEI, but his company has ESG, which is corporate DEI, all over its website. We need to get away from this check-the-box mentality that suggests that we've done something about race, when in actuality we've put up walls. Diversity is a wonderful thing, provided that you don't get in the way of excellence. Inclusion is a fantastic thing, provided that you don't give away to competence. And equity is a wonderful thing, as long as you don't give up fair play.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Ms. Crouch, you were referenced. You have 30 seconds to respond.
No.
Mr. Chambers, would you like to respond?
Listen, I mean, Curtis hasn't signed the front of a paycheck for 40 years like I have, and we hire the best. We have a level playing field. We hire the best. We drive for profit, and that's been proven out for 40 years because we've grown that business, and that's how I'd run the state. I think the state needs a CEO. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chambers. Going to move on to the next question, Phil.
A key component of many Republican campaigns over the past 8 years has been being an outsider. In fact, we've heard it a number of times during this campaign, but on stage right now we have a sitting lieutenant governor, a sitting United States senator, a former state attorney general, and two people who have held the highest job in state government for attracting new businesses and jobs. With that said, and Ms. Crouch, we'll start with you here, how can anyone in this primary claim to be an outsider?
I don't know. But I'm proud of my public service. And I am the only one that has the political courage to take on axing the tax, to making priority those Hoosiers that struggle with mental illness and addiction as part of my campaign and part of my administration as governor. And as governor, I also have lieutenant governor, I have a track record. I led the fight to expand broadband throughout Indiana. I protected our farmland and our military sites. I stood up and fought FSSA on behalf of parents of severely disabled children. And then I voted for the largest property tax cut in our state's history and co-founded the Indiana Mental Health Roundtable to be able to bring help to those Hoosiers that are struggling with mental illness and addiction. I want to be a voice for you, the listeners, the viewers out there. I want to be the person that stands up for you to fight to eliminate the income tax, to fight the drug cartels and their Chinese allies, and then to be sure to help those that struggle with mental illness and addiction.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Doden, the claim of an outsider, how do you define it?
Well, I'm not really focused on being an outsider. I mean, I'm focused on leadership and a bold vision, and that's what we've been pitching from day one. I had the opportunity and the privilege to serve the state of Indiana, and during that time was the architect of regional cities. The first time in our history that we had put money into the regions, allowing each 3 regions to really work with each other and grow. And we put $126 million into the regions, and the private sector did $1.25 billion of deals in 1 year. Now we're trying to do something that's never been done in history. We have a plan for our small towns. For 50 years, we have ignored our small towns and forgotten them, and we have a plan to put 10% of our economic development budget into our small towns and transform them all over the state of Indiana. We've gone further and said we're the first county in the country to come up with a zero-cost adoption plan that would help the 13,000 kids in foster care experience a loving home. This kind of vision and leadership is what we're focused on.
So just to be clear, Mr. Doden, you don't consider yourself an outsider?
I'm focused on being a leader and a visionary.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Mr. Braun, 60 seconds to you.
So I think an outsider ought to be defined by what you've done for most of your life. I bucked the trend from the day I got out of school and moved back to my hometown. I've been a scrappy entrepreneur for 37 years. Been the loudest voice in the U.S. Senate about fiscal integrity. So you can do it in many different ways. And it's going to boil down to who is really going to shake the system up. And I think that should be clear by what you've done methodically over a long period of time. And I cut my teeth in the real world. In the time I've spent in government, it's been railing against it. And the ultimate outsider in politics, you know who I'm talking about, endorsed me, not anyone else on this stage. He is the guy that broke the system at the federal level, and now the system's trying to take him out. So if you want to know who the outsider is, that's very clear, and I represent that here.
So just to be clear, you're talking about the former President Donald Trump.
To be clear, yes.
Okay, Mr. Braun, thank you very much.